collaboration to the visitor. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yang berbahagia Dato' Mustafa Ahmed, Special Officer Deputy Director of Special Planning and Implementation Division from Prime Minister Office. Mr. Roderick Galdes Bautam, Minister for Social Accommodation. Mr. Farouk Mahmud, FIABCI World President. Yang Mulia Tengku Dato' Abdul Aziz Tengku Mahmud, President of FIABCI Malaysia. Mr. Asen Macedono, FIABCI World President-elect. FIABCI past World President, ESCO members of FIABCI Malaysia, our guests from overseas, welcome to Malaysia, and we hope you enjoy your stay in Malaysia. Tan Sri, Dato', ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sparing your precious Saturday to join us here at the parallel event, Perception of Prosperous Future of Cities with People's Participation. Without further ado, I would like to pass the mic to our Master of Ceremony today, Ms. Daniel Grossenbacher.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for coming. FIABCI, the International Real Estate Federation, is a big family of professionals of real estate from around the world. So we're going to do this event in a family atmosphere, relax, and I want the participation of everybody who wants to add to our discussions. So the program today is, the first part will be on the City Prosperity Initiative from UN Habitat, for which FIABCI has developed a complement, which is the City Prosperity Initiative Perception Index, bringing the voice of the people, as was the wish of the participants in Habitat 3. So this first section, we're going to have a first introduction to the CPI after a few words from officials, and then we will have a panel on this tool and on ways to monitor the progress and the implementation of the SDGs. Then we will have a coffee break around 5 o'clock, and as you saw, there is food, drinks for everybody, so you can network during that period. Then we will reconvene for a panel on affordable housing. And finally, we'll have a panel on new technologies, such as blockchain technology. So thank you very much for being here. And now I would like to ask the president of the Malaysia chapter, Tengku Aziz Tengku Mahmud. I'm sure I made a mistake in your name. Okay, where is Mr. Okay, very good. Would you kindly come and speak?
Thank you, Daniel. Yang berbahagia, Dato' Mustafa Ahmed, Special Officer, Deputy Director of the Special Planning and Implementation Division of the Prime Minister's Office, Mr. Roderick Galdes, Madam Minister for Social Accommodation, Ms. Alexandra from the United Nations in charge of CPI, Mr. Farouk Mahmud, FIABCI World President, Mr. Asen Macedono, FIABCI World President-elect, FIABCI past World Presidents, overseas and local delegates, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to you. First of all, on behalf of FIABCI Malaysia, it gives me great pleasure to stand before you here today to greet all of you and thank you for sparing your precious Saturday afternoon to be with us today. To the international delegates, welcome to Malaysia, and we hope you are enjoying your stay here. The Earth is home to 7.4 billion people around the world, with more than half of those living in an urban setting and using 80% of the planet's resources. It is forecasted that by 2050, the population will be close to 10 billion, with 80% of that population expected to be urbanized. Throughout history, economic prosperity cannot be achieved without urbanization. Cities are growing rapidly. People continue to migrate to cities for better economic, social, and creative opportunities, hence increasing the density of the growing cities. While cities compete and sometimes battle issues pertaining to climate change, social and economic development issues, oftentimes they have to do so within a budgetary and limited resources. While urbanization is inevitable, the issues faced by growing cities are relatively challenging. More regulations are needed. We should be agile, transparent, and city-scale governance. Development of institutional capacity, and not forgetting the cultural and leisure capital, developing technologies, climate changes, and the list goes on and on. Holistic approach is in dire need for the city planning to overcome the issues mentioned just now. Today, we are focusing on City Prosperity Initiative, in short CPI, a United Nations platform for urban data developed to formulate evidence-based decision-making and monitoring for cities. The basis of the initiative is an index created by UN Habitat in 2012, developed as a response to the demand of local authorities in need of a tool which measures the prosperity and sustainability of cities. The CPI serves as a baseline setting, a decision-making tool, a policy dialogue, and a monitoring instrument. The index is current and evolving and uses different tools to develop products which measures the different aspects of the urbanization of a city. The CPI dimensions of property include quality of life, equity and social inclusion, environmental sustainability, urban governance and legislation, productivity and infrastructure development. We believe that a well-planned city that involves the participation of the people is a well-prepared city, whereby city leaders are prepared today for future problems and anticipate the future. City leaders are then ready to manage risks and see opportunities from a vantage point by staying ahead of challenges. Delivering improvement is the main reason why local city leaders are elected. We believe that planning improves impact. Successful cities undertake priority projects to build momentum. A good city planning that focuses on the prosperity of the city as well as its people is very likely to bring a lot of economic benefits to the city and to the country. Last but not least, in closing, I would like to once again thank all of you for being able to be with us today, and we hope you enjoy the following sessions. Thank you very much.
I would now like to invite Mr. Habib Mahmood, our world president from India, to address the attendees.
Thank you, Daniel. Good afternoon to members on the dais, members in this audience. On behalf of FIABCI, I'd like to welcome you to the parallel event of the World Urban Forum 9. FIABCI is proud to be a partner with UN Habitat and to support local and national authorities in reaching sustainable development goals and successfully implementing and monitoring the new urban agenda throughout the City Prosperity Initiative. We have a great opportunity today to hear from Eduardo Moreno, UN Habitat's Director of Research and Capacity Development, on the implementation and the results of the City Prosperity Initiative. He's expected in a short while, and we have Alessandra Perez, who's here right now. City Prosperity Initiative is followed by an open discussion of ideas for making our cities more sustainable as it pertains to housing. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge individuals who have been key to FIABCI's involvement and to bringing us here today. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Enrico Campioni, our President of FIABCI 2010-11. Has a great passion for this work and he takes it very seriously. Thank you. Pertaining to matters of United Nations and housing, he has advocated for the private real estate sector as a part of the solution. Real estate sector as part of the solution for city sustainability. I would also acknowledge our 2015-16 World President, Daniel Grossenbacher. We have Eduardo Moreno. We just welcomed you and please do join in.
Thank you.
We're in this room today largely thanks to Danielle and her commitment to ensuring FIABCI has a strong presence at this forum. I hope some of you were able to attend our networking event held yesterday in the Convention Center. It was a great success. Also thanks to Daniel's efforts. I thank my immediate predecessor, Mr. Kirkor Artarhanyan, and the two world presidents that will follow me, Mr. Arsen Makadonov. I would also like to recognize the presence of Dato Alan Tong, who's been a great pillar of support to the FIABCI International and to FIABCI World. I'd also like to recognize Mr. Flavio Gonzaga Nunes, our past president, and the leadership of Malaysia. I must say that the President, Mr. Abdulaziz, Dr. Yuki Su, and all the officials and the staff have really burnt the midnight oil to make this event a great success. I thank them for the valuable assistance in organizing this program. Now, without further delay, I'd like you to continue and start the program. Thank you very much.
I would now like to ask Mr. Eduardo Moreno to do a presentation on the City Prosperity Initiative. Yes, we should have everything ready for you.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all of you. Let me start by saying that I asked Alejandra, who was sitting there, and to eventually to make the presentation and to tell you that she was Eduardo, and maybe it was not that possible for you to think. City Prosperity Initiative, in fact, started as an index in 2014. And the reason of this is that UN Habitat, that is mandated by the General Assembly in New York to depict global conditions and trends in cities, to understand how urbanization is happening, what is driving the changes, how cities are performing. We present every 2 years a global report that is called the State of the World Cities. And 2014 I was in London presenting this report to the media. And I remember that one of the journalists from The Guardian asked me a very relevant question that is exactly this. He said to me, how do we know that London or Manchester or any other city is more sustainable than the other? Even a more important thing, since you are real estate developers, how do we know that the actions that we are implementing today, policies, actions, strategies, projects, are changing the city for the best and not for the worst? How do we know that sustainability of the city through the actions that you are implementing are good or not? And based on that, we propose, let's monitor this. Let's create some forms of responding to this clever question of the journalists. And when we were looking at this, we never thought we need to create an index. What we wanted to do is to utilize existing metrics and to respond to this question. But we found 2 or 3 fundamental problems that force somehow us to adopt our own now called City Prosperity Index and initiative. Number 1 is that more of the existing indexes were at the national level. Very few connection to cities, or very few understanding of some of the dynamics of cities. Second important thing is that those that were at city level, they were very sectoral in nature. Some of them were for competitiveness, others for safety, others for the environment. But our main premise, and I would like that you consider this in what we are doing in UN Habitat, is that whatever you do in one dimension has important implications in other dimensions. In Nairobi, where we live now, when the government is introducing infrastructure development, if it's not carefully analyzed and designed, it's going to affect the equity of the city as it is happening. In many other countries, when you have economic development and prosperity, you may affect the environmental conditions of the city. For us, measurement means fundamentally looking at the interrelations of the dimension. It is looking how you will not compromise what you are doing today by some unnecessary or unexpected outcomes of what you do. Then we thought, let's decide something, but designing means responding to some fundamental questions. Number 1 is, shall we use agreed indicators, existing indicators? Shall we establish our own standards to measure, which are not our standards, are the standards of the world? And this is important because when you measure against something, the main important element is these measurements should guide you somehow to some aspirational level of change. You measure to be in a better position, not for the sake of measuring. And for instance, if you want to measure how compact is a city, it's because you believe that a dense, a compact, a walkable city is better than a sprawling city. Therefore, your indicators should adjust in terms of measurement to this standard. You measure to understand also how the city behaves. And I was just in a meeting saying that in the last 20 years, cities, and to a large extent because of your own work, grew unnecessarily in the periphery 3 times, 4 times more of what the cities needed. They expanded in sprawling, reducing densities, affecting the environment, increasing the cost of infrastructure, generating inequalities. Why what this is happening? Because we need to understand that the form, the structure of the city can conspire against prosperity or can benefit prosperity. So let's pay attention to the form. And if we pay attention to the form of the city, let's include indicators that do that. And this is what we were doing with this. Obviously, cities, when you work with cities, they require training and support. 65% of cities in the world told us we don't have the means and conditions to measure what is changing us and how. Therefore, we associated with the city prosperity a strong component of training and capacity development. By doing this, we developed a measurement tool based on 6 dimensions. I would like to take 2-3 minutes. How much time do I have, by the way? Okay. 15. Okay, good. We didn't want to design ourselves, UN Habitat, 3-4 experts. What represent sustainability and prosperity in the city to respond to these journalists. So what we did is, and this is one of the great advantages of the UN, we ask member states, we ask cities, and we prepare a questionnaire, and we ask 54 cities in the world to tell us, the citizens of this, or the inhabitants, in some cases they are not citizens, they are just inhabitants of the cities, to tell us what is prosperity for them. And we found 6 things, and 1 minute or less about this. They told us, if my city is prosperous and sustainable, I need to have a job, and a well-paid job. And my city need to have some forms that they explain in terms of proximity jobs, that we translated in our language to something like economies of agglomeration, economies that enable the city to be economically vibrant. But this is not only all. They also told us we need good infrastructure, basic infrastructure, but connectivity infrastructure. And connectivity takes 2 forms. It has to do with the fundamental notion of internet and other forms of connectivity, but also street connectivity, as simple as that. And then we develop very special software and mechanisms to measure how connected and walkable and the cities are in terms of a street index. And a street index that is telling us if the cities will prosper in the future, they will have problems of traffic jams, they will have problems of paralyzation of functions, etc. I don't have time to go into the details of this, but it was so novel, so important, that it really generated new forms that we started calling measuring the spatial capital of the city, measuring the conditions of the city. Then people told us a city that is really prosperous should have good quality of life. And eventually quality of life was a dimension that changed a lot. For some people in Latin America, quality of life, for obvious reason, was a city free of homicide, free of crime, free of violence. In Asia, they told us quality of life is a city with public goods, with public spaces, with recreational areas. In Europe, people told us it's a walkable area, it's a proximity area, etc. Quality of life takes different dimensions, but all refer to one fundamental: to live urbanization of the city in the best manner possible. But when you do that, then you say, but who? Who lives like that? And people told us a prosperous city cannot claim to be prosperous if 20, 30, 50% of the population is not benefiting from these city advantages. And this is what is happening in many cities today. Even in the global north, you have mechanisms of exclusion, marginalization, inequality, poverty, that take different forms, but do not enable inhabitants to be prosperous in their own city. And then you have, obviously, a fundamental comment that it was the meeting where I was just now on urban governance, to measure how the city works, how it operates, who takes decisions, which decisions are better, how they will change the city. And the last one, you can imagine, is the environment. So based on this, we created this City Prosperity Index, only to measure in a report the state of the world cities, 80 cities in the world, but then immediately after, we started getting requests from government, from national government, local authorities, important actors like the private sector, like you, to tell us how is the prosperity of our city. And then we understood something. Measurement is not enough. We always knew that, but in the case of the report, we wanted to say, we measure to understand what is happening, but we measure to change what is not happening well, or to improve what is happening better. And then the index is trying to connect in a very, I would say, organic and intelligent manner, data information to decision making. We are not a university. We don't have that capacities, as important as universities are, and we work with them, but what we want to do as the UN is to have an influence in policy making, in recommendations that can change the city. And this is what the City Prosperity is doing. Today, I think the number is close to 500 cities in the world where we are working, and here you have some examples. Mexico is by far the most important with 300, Colombia, Egypt, and others. And I would like to present to you some of the type of analysis that we do, and also invite you, because we are going to connect this presentation to a next one, that has to do with the same index, but at the perception level, in the integration of what people believe the city looks like and works and functions, what the city inspires to them. But here we talk about hard metrics, serious metrics. The other one are serious as well, but metrics that you can measure changes over time. Perception is a little bit more difficult because it has a subjective bias, but still it's extremely important to measure. So we were looking at the dimensions. Which cities in the world have good infrastructure? Why? What produced that? We compare. Then we measure by regions, not only by dimensions. Which cities are more advanced in the prosperity than others, or in the sustainability? Then we compare levels of development of cities, GDP per capita and others. And some of the conclusions before I present this is to tell you, and it was the title of this presentation if you notice, prosperity and sustainability of cities is not an accident. It doesn't happen in the vacuum. It happens only if you have political will, if you have institutions, if you have actors, if you have actors like you, private sector, committed for this positive change of cities. Otherwise, it will not happen. You will have a lot of negative externalities in the cities, perhaps short-term gains, but not in the long perspective, the overall benefit that even yourself will really use for better development of the city. Some examples to conclude the minutes that I have. Here, this is the Kingdom of South area where we are working. All these studies enable us to create something that we call a barometer of prosperity. You can see on your right, these green to red colors, where cities are located, why some cities are more prosperous than others. And when we started locating cities in the bracket of prosperity, we wanted to know what is behind this prosperity, what is enabling this city to be more prosperous than the others. And obviously, cities have many conditions and changes, but still we found some commonalities. And number one is that a prosperous city is a city that provides public goods in different forms. A prosperous city is one that uses mechanisms of regulation, governance, etc., for the public good, including planning. But what we found is cities are sprawling, then planning is not working, or is not working well. And it's not a matter of only regulating, it's a matter of understanding which are these changes that are affecting the city, and how they will affect in the future. And with these studies then, with these dimensions, we were able to look in more detail and compare cities in different places, comparing the sub-dimensions, and to understand that when you talk about infrastructure, there could be perhaps one specific indicators or sub-dimensions that are not performing well in the city. But what is important, and this is what the City Prosperity Index and the initiative is doing, is that let's suppose that you have a problem of air quality in the city. When we analyzed what was the factors triggering this poor air quality in the city, we found, in the cities analyzed, that 52% of the cases was a poor public transport. Lack of a good public good. Then air quality cannot be remediated by air quality of environmental solutions. It needs to be remediated by a better public transport. But now if you move to the public transport, you will understand that it has to do with rules, regulations on the public transport, with planning, with land uses, with density creations, and with elements like this that are telling us that a prosperity index or a prosperity dimension or a sustainability dimension that you measure should look at the interactions of the city and not at isolated indicators. And this is what we are trying to do. Then, as we look at as rankings or analysis of cities, we understood that we also need to look, we don't have the detail here, yes, to look at, is it possible, and I would like that you consider this for your own work, since we have good information in some cities, disaggregated at different levels, understanding historic trends, to imagine how your own interventions or any other important intervention in the city would affect positively or negatively the city, what we did is we work a lot with some universities on policy simulation actions. Sorry. It's understanding the likelihood of the impact of these interventions, your interventions, on environment, and quality of life, and productivity. And like this, we connected, and this is what is important, we connected the work that we are doing to policy making and understanding, to look which action will have the likelihood to better impact on what we are doing. With all this, I don't think it's important to go to the details, just to tell you that in each city, in each country, and I would like perhaps to conclude with this point, is we don't think that an index should be a blueprint. We don't think that the same index should be used in different contexts and in different cities. We have Wuhan in China. The same indicators are adjusted to the local conditions. Some of them are removed, others are integrated. In Saudi Arabia, when you talk about Jeddah compared with Riyadh, you understand that they have different challenges, the cities, and the indicators are also adjusted. So we work with something that we call contextual analysis of indicators. Not a blueprint, but a real adaptation of the measurement tools to each one of the cities. We lose in comparability, and we gain in political deepness in the analysis. And this is what we would like to do. And I'm looking here saying that I should end, and I would like to thank you for your attention, and just to tell you and to invite you that you're working in many of the cities of the world with important actions and transformation and transformative interventions, to consider utilizing this type of tools to make sure that what we are doing will have a long-lasting positive impact on the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask Mr. Pierre-Paul Geranian, our immediate past world president, to join the panel, please. A few comments, maybe 2-3 minutes from each of the panelists, and then I would like to have a few questions from the audience. So if I understand correctly, Mr. Moreno, Mexico is a country where several CPI analyses were done. So now I would like to ask Mr. Luis Diaz Canedo Jaime from Mexico to speak, and you have the choice, you can come here or you can take the microphone in front of you.
Hello, thank you very much for having me here. I am honored to be here with such a distinguished panel as well. I am Jeremías Díaz Canedo. I am manager of applied research at Infonavit. And today I will talk to you about 3 main subjects. And then as an introduction for, I guess, a discussion we will be having later. So first of all, I'm going to talk to you about my institution, what it is. Secondly, I'm going to tell you why my institution has become relevant in the context of the CPI. And thirdly, I'm going to talk about a little bit about why I think asking for citizens' perspective is very important, and how you can see that in other indicators. So first of all, this is, while you look at this diagram, I will tell you a little bit about the workings and some data on my institution. The best way to understand it is from the name itself. It is the Mexican Workers' Fund for Housing. And an interesting thing about our institution is, well, there are several things. Now, it is very unorthodox, and that is why it is often hard to explain. The institution is made up of 3 sectors in our board, all with equal representation. So you have the government, you also have the employers, and you have the workers. So this is one of the key successes in our institution. The society at large is represented within our board of governors. Secondly, We are a fiscal authority. Everybody's paycheck, 5% of everybody's paycheck goes into our fund. So it is a fairly large fund. It's so large that it is the largest mortgage company in Latin America. It is the largest pension fund in Mexico. And we are responsible for granting over 500,000 mortgages a year. To put it a little bit more in context, our assets in our balance sheet are over $65 billion. In terms of cash, we give out more than $6 billion in mortgages a year. So as you can see, it is very large. We have over 70% participation in the Mexican market. So if you are looking at the Mexican housing market, you cannot look at it without looking at our institution, basically. We are also very interested in, and we owe our existence to the Mexican workers. We want to make their lives better. UN Habitat has been a key collaborator with us. We are very excited in working with them, and that is why we have done so much with them so far. So in our first phase, we wanted to see, and one of the things that we were looking at in our country is that there was a lot of abandoned housing, and that was affecting the fund financially. So we wanted to see what was wrong. When you look at a mortgage, there are 3 or 4 things that sort of describe why a person is paying or not paying their mortgage. One of them is the financial conditions, the other one is the person and the risk of the person himself, and the third one is the house and its environment. Fourth one, I would say, is the relationship between the person and the house. So when we were looking at the environment, we saw that there was no data we could find to sort of describe what was going on in the cities, the environment surrounding those homes. So in the first phase, what we did was we worked with UN Habitat, and we did 153 cities, generating data that did not exist before, getting a clear reading of what was going on in our cities, and more important than that, where we needed to focus our attention. So once we had this information, we were able to go to municipal authorities, we were able to go to development banks and focalize resources and attention. And that has been very helpful, and we believe that will be great for the people, and also financially for the fund in the future. It will reduce our delinquency rates, and that will have financial benefits for us. So, having said this, we decided to go into a second phase of the project. In the second phase, we're doing a lot more, and we're very excited about it. One thing we're doing is we're increasing the evidence we need, so we're going to 305 cities. That is going to cover 90% of the population in Mexico, and in Mexico, close to 80% of the population lives in cities. So we're going to be attacking a huge amount of people. Secondly, we're exploring what the role of housing is within the Sustainable Development Goals. We argue that housing should be central and the integrating factor in achieving Sustainability Development Goals. So if you think about, for example, poverty, if you don't have appropriate housing, you are probably living in a situation of poverty. It has very clear implications on health, access to education, very clear implications on the environment, so on and so forth. So we think we have found the central and integrating factor to achieve Sustainability Development Goals, and we're working with UN Habitat to prove this and have this be implemented around the world. And thirdly, what we're doing is we're aligning our operation to achieve this goal. So what is the best home, and what home will accomplish the Sustainability Development Goals? We're opening ourselves up. What should we be doing to allow this? So we're very excited. And now, moving to the next phase. So they told me, we're presenting the perception, I guess, method for CPI. Why do you think perceptions are important? So the first thing, I'm an economist. So it's a strange transition. I used to be in charge of monetary policy implementation in Mexico. And one of the things I looked at a lot was inflation, obviously. So in economics and in inflation, when you look at inflation expectations, they're a self-fulfilling prophecy. If people expect inflation to increase, they will negotiate higher price rises in contracts, etc., and so that's how it translates into higher inflation. For us at the Infonavit, one of the things we look at is we ask people, are you happy with your mortgage? Are you happy with your home? And if they are not happy with their homes, we will see that those homes will be abandoned, that they will not pay their mortgages, and that has, clear and evident financial implications for our institutions. You can say the same thing about cities. If people are not happy in their cities, they will definitely abandon their cities. Thank you very much.
We now ask Mr. Kirko Ajdaranian to say a few words on his implication with the CPI.
Thank you very much, Daniel. The CPI program was initiated under the responsibility of World President Flavio Gonzaga Nunes, with the support of World President 2010-11 Enrico Campagnoli as President of International Organization Committee, and of course with the support of Daniel and all the leadership of FIABCI, Farouk, Hassan, Walid, Robin, all our chapters, and with our cooperation with UN Habitat. And here we want to present our really, we are really very, very thankful to Eduardo Moreno, because he was a key player in this success story. And today, with FIABCI cooperation, we are able to offer around the world this new City Prosperity Initiative. When we were together in Kenya last year, I think it was April, Mr. Jean Claus, the former Secretary General of UN Habitat, we signed together, in the presence of Flavio and Eduardo, our first cooperation agreement. And from this day, we are actively working to implement the CPI program around the world. Of course, World Urban Forum 9 is a key point for everybody, but we have an agenda. We are organizing during MIPIM in Cannes, 13th, 16th of March 2018. During MIPIM is the world's most important real estate exhibition. We organize World Property and Urban Forum. Important ministers, mayor of important cities. We are waiting the French President Emmanuel Macron. We are waiting the representative of European Union. And as you know, during 6 months, Bulgaria will have the presidency of European Union, and we have the support of our President-elect Asem Makedonov to have Europe with us as well. And this event will be extremely important, because we will have also the participation of world organizations for the first time in MIPIM of specific sectors of the real estate industry. And during this event, we will study the property side, World Property and Urban Forum, property side, how to keep in their land the citizens that they don't have today any property title, because most of the time their construction, their house is not formal, so there is no title, and how we can transform this informal housing to formal housing by providing them some titles and keeping them in their land. So this is an important factor. And the second, it will be again the presentation to the world, the City Prosperity Initiative with the support of UN Habitat. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is from Malaysia, Mr. Nazri Tumin, Head of Division of Marketing and Corporate Strategy Division, and from FIABCI.
Thank you, Daniel. Distinguished guests, members of the delegates, welcome to Malaysia. I hope it's not too late for me to wish you a welcome to Malaysia. My name is Nazri Tumin. I represent Sahabat Berhad, a company that's owned by the government of Malaysia, a company under the Ministry of Finance Incorporated. Basically, we've been mandated by the government to spearhead the development of FIABCI, our very own global technology hub. FIABCI, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with FIABCI, but the city has been established for almost 20 years. Can I see a show of hands? How many of you have heard or have been to FIABCI? Thank you. I think that shows that we have done our job well. Recently what we have done is that we have expressed our interest to UN Habitat, also FIABCI, for FIABCI to be considered for CBI. CBI is very crucial for us because when we talk about FIABCI, we want to be competitive not only regionally but also globally. The city, as I said, is actually a federal government project, but with participation of both the private sectors and also the community at large, because when we develop the city, we have to make sure that it's community inclusive. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary last year, and we have been going through tremendous growth. The city is also equipped with the state-of-art infrastructure to cater to the new emerging technology. The city is now home to more than 100,000 population, and we house more than 1,400 companies. Most of them are actually technology companies. I prepared actually a few slides for today's session, but I don't think that we have time to go through all. In a nutshell, basically, again, for you to experience the city, is for you to see the city itself. It's not very far from here. It's actually about 25 minutes away from the city center. It's actually on your way to the airport. And we have in fact organized or arranged for a tour for all the members on Monday. So we would like to welcome all the members to come over and see for yourself in terms of how we have progressed for the last 20 years. Until then, enjoy your stay in Malaysia, and I hope to see you all in FIABCI on Monday. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On my way from the airport, I saw that FIABCI won prizes, international prizes, as Area Avant-Garde City. So congratulations. I would like now to ask Mr. Didier Van Voetsen of ISOCAR, the International Society of City and Regional Planners, to give a few comments.
So, thank you, Daniel. First of all, I would like to thank you for this, for the invitation to talk about urban planning and about the Prosperity Index, and also to give you some reflections. We, as urban planners, when we are talking about planning cities for the future, what we are considering. First of all, I would like to ask you to think about 5 seconds, to take 5 seconds to think about the development of the humanity we had until now. If you consider that we took 2,000 years to build our cities and to have about 6 million inhabitants, a billion inhabitants, and if we know that we have 2050, 10 million inhabitants, if we are consuming the same amount of resources, land, energy, that we had and that we used for the previous 2,000 years, we are going to consume these surfaces and resources for the next 50 years, we have a problem. We have a very big problem. Therefore, I think this tool is so crucial, it's so essential when we are talking about planning our cities for the next 50 years or for the next 100 years. The music is also very dramatic, so this is dramatic. And it is reflecting also the challenges we have for humanity. You know, the cavalry is coming. And no, but I think we have to think seriously about the challenges we have as we want to build these cities for the next 50 years. So urban planners are thinking ahead and planning cities for the next 150 years. And we are thinking always to plan cities in a sustainable way, yes, integrated, including communities and the civil society, the population. So we need the two levels, so the top-down and the bottom-up processes, including all the professionals, all the experts, and also all the citizens. And this is the place where we have to build our cities together. So the tool is essential when we are talking about urban planning and planning our cities and planning our future sustainable and our environment, right? But we have to think also about capacity building, education of all these future citizens, you know, all these new people joining and including and have to include our future cities. So how they are going to live, how they are going to use the resources, how they are going to become more sustainable. And this is also a task, and I hope it will be a task for this tool for the next future. So this is some reactions and some recommendations from the urban planning side. Thank you very much.
Well, last but not least, Mr. Enrico Campagnoli, World President of FIABCI in 2010-2011, and President of the International Committee, FIABCI.
So past president. I think that is the time to understand that we are at a turning point. Also for the reason that Didier was saying. I think that something wrong. Yes. We have to give a glance to the past to be able to organize next future. And here we have, for the first session, a book. A book because when we want to look forward, we have to understand what has been before. And when we speak about a memorandum of understanding made May 11, after a very long negotiation between Kirko and this situation in which private sector promote the support and action of UN Habitat is coming out from a history of many, many years of cooperation of the private real estate sector that was showing a strong commitment in social responsibility. And when somebody, there are some books, somebody one for this session, there are this book, the second session will be the book of the affordable housing, and for the third session there is a working paper for the future. Now when you see this book, we will find a very strange situation. FIABCI was involved in the definition of a place of United Nations is, now should be in Chicago, instead now it's in New York, has been involved in bringing it under the sun, in the UN system, with the theory of that capital, and so on, and at the end, now is a turning point in which the population is growing very much. The urbanization trend is particularly high. And at this point, our organization as private sector brought on since several years, as you will see here, and consideration. We have to involve the people in making the city better. This system that was presented in Rio Plus 20 by a little United Nations organization, United Nations Global Compacity Program, was involving the indicators on perception, but also on data made by a little group in the city. Private sector, at that point, made a memorandum of understanding, creating a platform that will allow, under that direction, the participation of the people. The participation of the people is a crucial matter for this prosperity. 5 minutes in tell to me that I have to run. Let me see. Let's go forward. These are the 3 lines in which, since many years, our organization is moving. And you see 1, 2, 3, but you can understand a policy on short term, a policy on middle term, a policy on very long term. The first term is connected substantially with a way to monitor the urban progress in reaching sustainable development goals involving the people. Of course, complementing what is resulting with data, evaluating that with the same indicators. The second, what Didier was saying, means that there are need of millions of affordable housing. The first and the second session, the first and second line of our federation are connected, because you cannot have affordable housing, affordable city, if you have many affordable housing, but you are not monitoring the urban progress in reaching sustainable development goals. But this is not enough. In the future, and this is the third line, we build an experience UNEC, the policy framework for sustainable real estate development, with a very large impact in UNEC. Now, this has to be worldwide, because a global policy for sustainable real estate development is the key for with the poverty, for touch many aspects of the sustainable development goals. As you see here, the second and third session will be, this parallel event are be connected with these 2 other lines, but the follow-up of the first is what has been signed by Kirko in Nairobi. Is this agreement, and this agreement brought in a few months to have active online a concrete platform that has been tested in Athens, and it's working. I think that today we have taken into consideration that a city of Kuala Lumpur, of a Greek Kuala Lumpur, Sibel Haya, sent a letter of interest at UNHABITAT, and UNHABITAT replied in accepting this letter of interest and operating, acting with a proceeding, and if everything will go in the best way, this would be a step that will bring to a signing agreement at a meeting in next March, in a moment in which will be possible to show to the world, meeting means world in the real estate, show to the world that the participation of people can be fundamental for the development of prosperous cities. What now? We have two engagements. One is the promotion, and one is the support. The promotion has to make knowing the interest of the private real estate sector and the public sector in using the data, the data, but also the perception of people, what the people think, the opinion of the people, to make the city better, and the support, because we have made the software needs to be updated, need to see run it, need to involve the people to operate this correctly. And this is something in which our organization, with the decision of the board to make the International Urban Monitoring Lab and National Urban Monitoring Labs to comply to this obligation, we have tried to be ready to do. What next? Next is there. And of course, I hope that not many cities will start to ask for perception index assessment, because this will be something for our organization will be a big pleasure, but also an extraordinary effort, because this can change the way for the private sector to operate, because this action is practically a way in which the private sector operates in a very strong social responsibility commitment of the public authority, local authority, government, and the United Nations, and it's also something that is interest of the private sector, because prosperous cities is also prosperous market. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Enrico. We have time for 2 questions before the coffee break. Anybody volunteers? Yes, please. Would you like to come here? There's a microphone over there. Or... Please identify yourself before you ask your question.
Hi, my name is Ruslan Rohov. I'm from Ukraine. I was elected like a chief of National Ukraine Urban Monitoring Lab. And I want to ask how we can provide this CPI initiative in Ukraine, and what we should do to provide this idea in our country.
Thank you very much. Well, I think Mr. Enrico Campagnoli can answer your question.
It's going. I think need to be, I can say, organized in a structured way. In May has been signed the agreement. On July has been defined with the UN Habitat Office a methodology to apply that. Now, I think that things have to be modified, implemented, but I think that what has been decided there is a very good basis. It means are defined all the steps that need to be followed. Now we have the decision of the board of our organization, of the international to constitute the International Real Estate Federation, the International Monitoring Lab, and the National Monitoring Lab. How to make them and how they have to operate. There is the proceeding. This proceeding will be, I think, in next month, also reviewed on the basis of some first experience. This will be, I think, what will be considered in the next World Congress that we are going to make in Dubai in last day of April, beginning on May. So this will be the time in which it will be possible to organize better in a structured way all the national chapter together and following, of course, the indication of UN Habitat.
Thank you very much. So there will be a clear process that will be defined, and there will be some training, and I think the most important event, our Dubai Congress, will enable all of you who are interested in having a local or national urban lab. That will be the place to learn how to do it, steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can I ask anybody else who would like to have a question? Certainly, please.
My name is Yao Zhang. I'm past president of FIABCI Malaysian chapter. Now my question is, the people who spoke, I think the only person who spoke was a person on the far left on educating the incoming people on how to use the city. Now, in order to measure your city prosperity index, the software are the people. Your hardware is nothing anybody can do that, can repeat it. China had many of this city, ghost city, with no people. Now, prosperity is actually on employment of the people and its productivity. Now, in order to measure the prosperity of a city, all these factors has to be taken into account. Now, I have not seen anything that is on education, on how to live in a city, on the health sector. Now, all these are part of measurement of the prosperity of a city. Now, on education, on ethic and moral is also an important part of prosperity of a city. Now, maybe the panel can answer some of these questions that are raised. Thank you.
Who would like to take a question? Didier, would you like to take a question? Eduardo, maybe? So, don't be shy, we can have more than one answer. Or you can come here, actually. You don't need to fight for the microphone.
No, I was simply mentioning that capacity building and education is essential for all the generations at all levels, not only the citizens, but also the politicians and the experts. There are some experts that are still planning and using old technologies and models, you know. We simply have to change our mind. You know, we need another approach when we are thinking about the cities for the next future, you know, for the next 100. So this education has to be implemented at all levels, starting from schools, you know, simply schools. It has to be a whole program developed from the national, integrated national policies or on the local level, that including all the levels of governance and all the decision makers. You understand? So this is simply my contribution to the thing. We can talk hours and hours.
Yes, but during the coffee break you'll have time. Eduardo, you wanted to add a comment?
Yes, I agree with the person who asked the question. Education is fundamental, but it's the way we look at it from our respective mandates and possibilities of working with you. It's for us, UN Habitat education translates into training, into capacity development, into awareness, into assessing impact and change, into having peer review and exchanges. So we do all that, and we do all that in different ways. We have also important sectoral programs like housing, that we call Housing at the Center, in which we have all this educational component on how housing should contribute to sustainable development, as do we have with other programs. I would think, to respond to you, that we do this form of education, but in our own realm of intervention, which is through training and capacity development and awareness campaign.
I have good news for you, however. I must tell you that yesterday I saw a solution from Russia. Russia, an organization as Russia, has developed a game for young people that they can play on the internet, on their iPad, on their iPhone, and they learn how to manage waste in their own city and their house, how to think of reducing the bill for their parents, electricity, water, food consumption, and how to manage their environment, their own, how to manage their building. This has been translated in 7 languages. It is now available on Apple Store, and it will be showcased in the book that we're preparing, Volume 3, which will be launched in July of this year in New York City. So I will find the card for you of the lady who developed this program, and she said you have to train kids since they're 3 years old.
Daniel, may I implement your comments?
Absolutely, go ahead.
I think that I need to add something. When you have the graphic and you have for each indicator a frequency graphic, you will find some indicators that have some problem, not optimal situation. And of course, inside the assessment perception index, there is a report of UN-Habitat in which are given indication, I don't know if it's the right word, indication to make the situation better. I think that the problem that is what you arise will be expressed in some way in these indicators, as we are not thinking to make a photo, but to make a movie. It means to repeat the assessment after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. The local policy can take in consideration also the formation, also the application on
the games
to make things better.
Thank you very much. It's now time to enjoy the drinks and the food. 10-minute break, and then please come back because we have a lot to share with you. We have 2 more panels.
Within countries. So that just gives an indication of the scope of the problem. So one solution to the increase in house prices is, of course, to build social housing, and we can actually see that this is what many of our member countries do. But what we can also see that actually social housing makes up just a very small share of most of the housing stock in most of the OECD member countries. So we have some countries like the Netherlands, like Austria, where social housing is above 25% of the entire housing stock. But in most OECD member countries, it is well below 10%. And in actually several countries, there's essentially no social housing. So what we can also see is that while social housing is important, it's actually not enough to solve the housing affordability problem. And what we need is an approach that takes, what we need is a dual approach. So on the one hand, of course, we need social housing as a targeted solution, especially for the poorest people who are never going to be able to afford housing in the private rental market. But at the same time, we also need more construction of affordable housing by the private sector. This is something that many of our member countries are working towards. But then again, it's also important to look at what kind of housing is being built. Because what we also see is that just building houses is not enough. We need to build the right houses, and we need to build the right houses in the right locations and in the right way. So what we need is compact development. What we need is transport-oriented development. We need sustainable densities. We don't want densities that are too high, because too high densities simply create cities that do not have a good quality of life. But at the same time, we want densities that can ensure a good, that can sustain a good public transport system. And in general, what we see is that with densities of approximately 4,000 to 5,000 inhabitants per square kilometer, we can actually be able to build efficient public transport systems that have enough customers to run effectively, but at the same time we can still have a high quality of life at this population density. We also want mixed-use developments, so there's no point in having people living in one side of the city and having to commute to the other side of the city. What we want is people living and working close together to reduce commutes, to reduce the strain on our infrastructure. And all those actually gives a fairly clear message, and that is that good land use policies matter. And with this, I actually already want to end my presentation, but not without referring you to the OECD work on the topic. We have just released 2 reports on land use policies. I can recommend to all to visit the website to see more information on OECD recommendations on land use policies. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I know you have to leave, so anytime that you feel it's your time, you can go because you have a plane to catch. Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. So you mentioned there's a book. Can you show the book that you have in your hands? Okay, so if we go on the site of OECD, we can find it.
You find it on the website.
Thank you very much. Have a safe trip. I would now like to ask Mr. Derek Valentine from Canada, from, I don't know the word in French, SCHL, but you please say it in English.
Thank you very much, Daniel, and thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you in this panel and in this session. And it's fabulous that this sector is participating in the World Urban Forum and has an important voice in shaping the conversation that occurs here. We completely recognize that within our countries, but more importantly globally, if we are going to build a more inclusive and sustainable city and a system of cities, that we need participation from across the spectrum of sectors and from the diverse interests that inform city building. Today I'm here to represent Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, where I've been recently appointed to chair the board for that organization. CMHC is Canada's national housing agency. We've been, for 80 years, fulfilling a mandate to assist Canadians in achieving their housing needs. We do this both by offering mortgage insurance. We have a significant mortgage insurance program which assists access to housing for a large number of people. And we do it through the delivery of federal government housing assistance to support particularly low and moderate income households. And importantly, we also provide a technical resource to the industry through both our research and our market analysis work and help support an understanding of what's happening and the dynamic nature of the marketplace, and also where certain policy interventions can have important impact. In 2016, our agency, CMHC, and other members of the Canadian government were in Quito, and there confirmed Canada's support for Cities for All, the New Urban Agenda, and the Sustainable Development Goals. And it's really that work, or the principles embedded in those agreements, which have laid the foundation for Canada's work since Quito on the development of a national housing strategy. In late 2017, a strategy was laid out that will guide the federal government's activities in support of the delivery of housing and housing affordability. And importantly, it will also guide and help bring together the activities that happen at different levels of government. Canada, like many other nations, is not a singular government, but a series of governments that have to work in a coordinated effort to have impact if we're trying to address a particular policy issue. And our agency has been tasked with leading the implementation of this particular strategy. This strategy focuses on addressing the housing needs of most vulnerable populations, so we're clearly targeting housing that will address the needs of women and children fleeing violence, of indigenous communities, for those persons with disabilities or those persons suffering from mental health issues. But in so doing, in the instruments that will be used in the delivery of policy, it is to very much build sustainable and inclusive communities. So not to work in solving these things as isolated events, but to work in creating a policy that really allows a more holistic solution, both in its built form and the way in which it integrates with the urban fabric. The development policy is a good example of how the implementation is most likely to roll out, in that it was developed through a broad set of consultations, a lot of community and sector participation, both from interested community groups, but also very importantly from private sector interests who really help shape how those interests might be drawn into the delivery of this strategy. So in shaping this strategy, different kinds of instruments will be used. There will be a small component which is designed to support income, or the demand side, or provide some income to support the very low income households. There are components which will clearly, as we saw in the examples before us, try and address the gaps in the social housing framework which are missing, which can come and reinforce that particular set of housing needs. And there importantly is a large component which is set aside as a co-investment fund designed to draw other capital into the production of affordable housing. And that capital largely will come from private sector sources. So this, you could think about the government's interest is in finding ways to encourage and de-risk some of that private sector capital drawn in to the affordable housing side, as well as the very significant capital and assets that exist into the community sector, which can be redeployed and regenerated to produce even more affordable housing. We can only do that in a continued spirit of collaboration within Canada, and particularly with sectors such as the real estate sector. And we look very much forward there and on an international scale to look for exemplars as we continue to roll out this implementation and to think about how we can improve the strategy over the course of its projected 10-year horizon, but one which will obviously last much longer than that. Thank you very much.
From America to Asia, I'll ask Mr. Sumawinata from Jakarta, who is the president of FIABCI Indonesia and the president-elect of Asia Pacific, to tell us about his situation.
Distinguished guests of World Urban Forum, delegates and participants, good evening. It's a great pleasure to be speaking to you today in this prestigious forum. Ladies and gentlemen, affordable housing currently is the big concern in Indonesia. To provide houses for all people, private sector has a strategic role for supporting the government obligation. The government in Indonesia aims to provide adequate housing facilities to low-income citizens and to reduce a significant number of housing backlog in Indonesia through program Juta Rumah, 1 million houses program in a year. 1 million houses program is an ambitious initiative to provide 1 million publicly and privately financial units per year. Through 1 million houses program, the government has issued a set of schemes of rules that also the private sector can involve for affordable housing. Nonetheless, Housing needs are diverse through Indonesia and require different policy responses. For poor people household in Indonesia, cultural preference to avoid long-term indebtedness and unrecorded financial data make poor household characterized as a non-unbankable category. For low-income people, the government of Indonesia also issue a set of schemes and rules that also involve the private sector for developing low-cost housing. Introduced in 2011, the market for small houses has been growing. It also means that private developers are also playing a strategic role because majority of subsidized housing are developed by private developers. The other initiatives and incentives from government for that matters are developing lower-cost housing are relaxing tax regulation and government incentive. Nowadays, Indonesia Real Estate Association has around 3,300 members around Indonesia, almost 34 regions. Out of this number, about 75 of our association members are low-cost housing developers. Moreover, we have a capacity to build approximately more 300,000 low-cost housing per year and 225,000 commercial houses a year. That means our association contribute around 59% to the government strategic program, build 1 million houses per every year. Ladies and gentlemen, in this occasion, I want to emphasize that land price and availability are the complex constraints that prevent the private sector from participating in low-cost housing development. As more people move and work in urban areas, it will be critical to support inclusive and well-planned urbanization and increase the supply of adequate housing. In order to enhance living standards, city must provide a special zoning area for development of low-cost housing. For the peripheral areas, the government must provide an infrastructure in order to support the economic growth, center, and development for the interregional connectivity. By developing infrastructure, private sector will naturally see opportunities for developing affordable housing. I personally believe that failures of the provision of affordable housing have also contributed to the growth of poverty. Housing is not only the economic driver, but also an opportunity for poverty alleviation. I invite all of participants from developing countries to concern with public housing in developing countries. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, it is great honor I speak to you in this prestigious event. Hopefully, this session will be beneficial and fruitful to all of us and bond us closer to hopefully we'll meet again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's pretty impressive, I must say. Congratulations. I would now like Mr. Inmundo Verna, Head of FACT Unit, Sectoral Policies Department of the International Labour Organization, to address
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for this invitation from FIABCI and the opportunity to address you. So, I work at the International International Labor Organization. So you may be asking, what am I doing here? So the first answer is that I'm an urbanist, so I have a personal connection with urban development and of course real estate development, but also from the ILO side, despite the name, which includes labor only, the ILO is a tripartite organization. It provides a platform and it represents entrepreneurs, workers, and government. Therefore, it is also for the enterprises. So, when I've seen here in the World Urban Forum references to people, I see these references as to residents, to users, to citizens, to clients, but we should also remember that these citizens, residents, users, they are also workers, and it's also important to see from this perspective. So I want to show you briefly what is the connection between the labor side and real estate development. First one, well, I know it's a bad picture, but this was taken in a wall in Quito during Habitat 3. It's one part of the Quito Declaration on Sustainable Cities and Human Settlements. In the bottom sentence, it says decent jobs. So it's part of the new urban agenda. So it's not there by coincidence. So what is the connection? I put on the left-hand column 6 issues, or 7 issues actually, which should be taken into consideration, and on the right-hand column are some suggestions of policies. So the first one, skills. Why do we need to bother about skills? It may seem obvious, but as you know, there is a lot of discussion about automation in construction, use of drones, robots, etc. I understand this, capital investment. At the same time, there are 120 million formal workers in the construction industry in the world, plus we can put the same number for informal workers. So we are talking about 240, 250 million workers. They are likely to continue one way or another, and a big part, an important part of the quality of the product of the construction industry and of real estate development is in the hands of the workers. So it's important to train them, the first point. The second one is occupational safety and health, to avoid accidents and diseases, which unfortunately still happen a lot in construction sites. So it's also a matter of training, but also a matter of management systems. It's interesting that in the presentation about the City Prosperity Index, there was a saying that prosperity is not by accident. So let's try to eliminate accidents. The third point, dialogue. A good dialogue between enterprises and workers will increase the motivation of workers and increase productivity. The expansion of markets. As you may know yourselves, when you go to another country, the larger the project and the further away the project, the more you need local labor. So it's important to devise ways to train and to engage local labor force. Multilateral investments, bidding for international projects more often require not only an environmental approach, but also a social one. Effective demand. The more people you have with purchasing power for real estate products, the more clients you have. So there is also, of course, a rationale for investing not only in local economic development, but also at the same time in local communities. Stability, operations of markets are also affected by social stability or the lack of it, including nearby communities. So to invest, in a conclusion, to invest in local economy and to promote participatory approaches together with real estate development is a win-win situation. So to conclude on the City Prosperity Index, I looked at it with great interest. I think it's wonderful work. I understand that it is still in progress, but there is a lot there. As I'm talking from the livelihoods perspective, I took particular attention to some indicators which include the ones that are in this slide: employment, labor productivity, jobs in manufacturing, and informal jobs. So I'm very pleased from the ILO perspective to see that these indicators are already included. I would be interested to learn more about such indicators, also about working conditions and other issues, and also I would be pleased to join hands with you and share our knowledge about indicators on working conditions, on quality of work and quantity of work that we have used in different circumstances and with different institutions. So we have a lot of knowledge about this, and I'll be happy to share and to learn more about your work. So this is what I wanted to present, and also to take the opportunity, as we are talking about real estate markets and labor markets, tomorrow at 13 hours in the one UN room at the World Urban Forum, we will have a session on housing markets and labor markets, exactly to continue this discussion here. How can you promote a better connection and a win-win situation between these two markets? Mrs. Lily Chen is kindly representing FIABCI as a speaker. The meeting will be chaired by Professor Ramin Keivani, who is here with us today. So I wait you there tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bernard. I will make sure that your comments on indicators for labor are transmitted to Mr. Eduardo Moreno. I think Mr. Moreno had to leave. Thank you so much. And now I would like to ask Mrs. Shouting Li, who is the Dean of Design and Architecture at FIABCI University in Taichung, Taiwan, to give us the results of her fascinating research.
Thank you, Danielle. Hi, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I probably is the last speaker in this session.
No, you're not.
I'm not? Okay, one more, great. No pressure. Okay, the reason I'm here is because I'm fairly new for FIABCI member. I just joined the members because Lily is doing the research to help to study the affordable housing issue. And she says it's not just the private sector's problem or concerning, and also academics should be, participate to discuss about these issues. So that's, the past couple months we are doing the research global-wise and of course target in Taiwan. Where we come from, Taiwan is actually only 36,000 kilometers, very small island. And for that small island, actually 75% of the land is mountains and greenery. So we only have 25% of the land could be built. However, 75% of population all live in the cities. And how much percentage, how many percent population we have? 25 million population only. And 75% of them live in the cities. Just give the numbers, how terrible in Taiwan and how crucial the numbers in Taiwan for people to buy a house. And although we do have 85% of the population own a house, only 15% of the population without a housing. But those 15 population is about 4.5 million of people. And those 4.5 people, 4.5 million of people, actually they are the young generations. So what is the crucial about the problem in Taiwan is probably crucial in all the major cities. Hong Kong is the worst case in the world. They need 18% more than their GDP in order to buy a house. And for Malaysia, we are here, average 4.4. Kuala Lumpur is about 5.4 in order to afford a house. We thought Japan, Tokyo is quite severe, quite crucial about their problem. But actually it's not. Japan, the average number is about 4.1, and Tokyo is about 4.7. Korean, 3.7, however, in city, Seoul, actually is 7.39. And Taiwan, average 9.24, but Taipei is 15.5 compared to Kuala Lumpur, Tokyo, Seoul, and Hong Kong. So Taiwan really facing big problem for young generation. We always joking, if you want to marry in Taiwan, you need a house, you need a car, you need a decent income. And see how terrible for new young generation, they could not afford the housing. And that's why in Taiwan, not just the housing problem, we also have the problem for the newborn baby. We dropped dramatically, probably number 2 in the world. So housing problem has really become really the problem we have to face too. So government in 2015, our new president actually promised we're going to have 200,000 units in the past 8 years, another future 8 years. But just 200,000, imagine that we have 4.5 million new generation needs the housing. So in Taiwan, the problem become really crucial. And what happened, this problem is not happened in one day. We used to own the house. Pretty much all the family could own a house. That's why we have 85% of the population own the house. But from 2005, not too long ago, the pricing of the land increasing dramatically. That was just like 12 or 13 years ago. And never come back, and it cannot drop, no longer. For new generation become really crucial. So housing problem, the most important issue here in Taiwan, probably most of the city, is the land issue. Of course, infrastructure, of course, the construction and the material, all the cost for building a house. Not just that, also the maintenance in the city is quite expensive. So for our social housing policy, actually we come out, we're doing the research for the past 8 months. Every couple months we have new solution come out. So maybe tomorrow Lily will share more because today I'm running out of time. But what we come out actually, just to share with you, the government is willing to take about 20% for those people who cannot afford even just rent a house. The government promised 20% of the population for those people who could not own a house. Government is going to take responsibility for that. So it's so heavy, the burden on top of the government. And we also noticed that just the government could not solve the problem. So what happened? That's why Lily is so important in this FIABCI as the member and also impact person in Taiwan. Government is going to invite private sector to be part of the social housing. So 20% for those people who cannot afford the housing, and for those 50% who might be able to rent a house. And those are the part, not just being taken care by the government, but also government invite the private sector, like developers. Many developers in Taiwan, actually, they are anxious and they are hesitate to participate. We are in the road now to have more people to participate. Not just the social housing, not just for the to buy or selling, but also for the rent policy in Taiwan. To build a new house, of course, it's a new policy, and together with the urban regeneration issues in Taiwan is also important because the life cycle, we just happened to have that big earthquake not too long ago, just a week ago. So urban regeneration become an issue. Together with that, we are actually, every urban regeneration, we're going to have at least like 10% to 20% percentage be part of the social housing. But not just that, not just the new housing, social housing, but more important in Taiwan is about the rent policy. So people, government now is training the rental agency in Taiwan. Instead of just a new house, for those abandoned and for those who own more than one house, and they are willing to share and they are willing to rent. So policies change every couple months. But we are very, very new, and we are in the time to learn like most of the major cities. So today, time constraint, I can only share about this. But tomorrow, Lily will share more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to know, Lily, tomorrow, are you going to show the pictures?
I don't have time. We only have 2 minutes.
Yeah, because they have gathered incredible pictures. Incredible pictures. One that is striking is homeless people are now relocated in cement pipes to build aqueducts, and each trunk of a pipe is now transformed into a house, and that's really striking. And they're piled from the ground up to the highways, and it creates an incredible city of pipes. So anyway, if you are available tomorrow at 1 o'clock, please go and listen to Lily. I would now like to ask Mr. Florentino Dulania, past president of Asia Pacific for FIABCI, to present an incredible video that you'll enjoy very much.
Good afternoon. Actually, I was requested by Daniel to look for a company who is involved in the affordable housing. So in the Philippines, there's no unified or integrated nationwide initiative from people or company to make our cities more affordable or sustainable. The national government, though, has several measures which ensures the provision, availability of affordable socialized housing for the marginalized sector, such as Republic Act 7279, a law promulgated by the Philippine government in 1992, wherein developers of such subdivision projects are required to develop an area of socialized housing equivalent to at least 20% of the total subdivision area or a subdivision project cost through balanced housing development program. Other initiatives are the housing projects and financing program at low interest rate and longer terms of making amortization affordable. Aside from these are the autonomous effort of local government units, cities or municipalities towards such in-city relocation, housing project of Valenzuela City, local government in Metro Manila to relocate the families of informal settlers living along waterways or danger zone. Private developers are also contributing in the provision of affordable housing in their independent capacity as company to their mass housing development project. A good example would be 8990 through their affordable housing brand, Deca Homes. 8990 Deca Homes is our declared winner of FIABCI Philippine Property and Real Estate Excellence Award in residential low-rise category on mass housing for 2016 and 2017. A significant development of 8990 capability of delivering affordable housing in the use of their precast technology, first implemented in 2004. Their house construction using precast concrete involves casting and curing reinforced concrete in a controlled environment before transporting to construction site or lifting assembly or finishing using the precast technology allows the construction of housing unit in just 8 to 10 days compared to the traditional method of piling up hollow blocks on top of each other, which requires 45 to 60 days and thereby lowering production costs. Aside from this, they offer easy eligibility, low equity, and monthly amortization with financing term of up to 25 years. The best of all is the easy move-in policy wherein the buyer can move after paying the minimum of $15,000 or $300. Another plus are the amenities that can be usually found in a middle-class subdivision development such as the semi-Olympic size swimming pool, basketball court, 24-hour security, clubhouse, and a church and some wakeboard. At present, 8990 is recognized as a top mass housing developer in the Philippines. It has completed 52 projects with 13 ongoing projects and delivered more than 52,586 housing units in 14 years. Aside from the mass housing project in different regions, 8990 Holdings is expanding into Metro Manila through their medium-rise or high-rise condominium. And the company had also ventured into hotel, leisure, resort development, currently to mall development. And that's a sample of the 8990. They can deliver it into 7-8 days. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Well, thank you very much. This is mind-boggling, and this is really changing the world. I think if we can build, villages or suburbs in 8 days, it really solves a lot of problems because the cost is going to be much lower, of course. Thank you so much. I would now like our last panelist, Mr. Nicolas Bouchou, President of Cercle Grand Paris, to give a few comments. I don't see you, Nicolas. Ah, there you are.
Danielle, thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished panelists, dear Derek, dear colleagues and friends. I would like to just briefly share a few thoughts with you about ongoing projects I'm involved in and ongoing processes part of in the context of Paris. How many people in the room are familiar, not with Paris, you should know the place, but with what we call Grand Paris? 1, 2, Greater Paris, Grand Paris? No, doesn't ring a bell? 3, 4? Yes, you got it. You should know. Okay. 10 years ago, 10 years in 2008, the French government launched a process sort of reboost the investments in the capital region, not just Paris, but the Paris region, 10 million plus inhabitants. Part of the equation is that there is 50,000 square meters of office space in the Paris region and about 5 million dwellings. Okay? just to give you the figures. You can guess that the real estate industry is a rather powerful driver in this context. The problem is that 10 years ago we came to a point where the division between all levels of local governments and the lack of ideas gave the feeling to a little bit everybody that the region, even if it has a GDP that is bigger than Belgium, was sort of slowly lagging behind the others. Okay? So our former president, Nicolas Sarkozy, stood up and said, that's not possible, we need to compete with Dubai, with Singapore, we could have quoted Kuala Lumpur and whomever, Shanghai, and be first of the class again. Then there was a massive process that was launched involving many different kinds of stakeholders. I won't describe it thoroughly, just to say that there was a decision in 2010 to launch a massive reinvestment programs in public transportation with 200 kilometers of new lines, 70 new stations. Everybody looked at those opportunities. There will be 70 new stations. Okay, let's figure out how we could build 70 new transit-oriented developments with a number of new office space, dwellings, etc. And all the major players in the real estate industry went to that and say, okay, where can we build? Nowhere. Nothing was ready. It was just a plan. It was a vision, right? They created the biggest one who could afford it. They created special divisions, even hired some people from the outside, sometimes a couple of people, and say, okay, this will be my metropolitan team. Okay? So you had this developer, for example, and even broker companies created special metropolitan division with people specifically targeting those future places. And this lasted for a while, and then, again, they faced each other and said, what's happening? Still nothing, right? So the problem is that everybody was losing a little bit of confidence. In the past years, it has been doing so. The government saying, it's a complex project, it will be launched, don't worry, and everybody looking a little bit around. But in the meantime, it attracted a lot of attention from investors worldwide. Okay? And the context is now the following. The real estate industry does really appear as being a critical component of the metropolitan economy. And this is not well known enough, right? Developers, brokers, all kinds of jobs linked with the real estate industry, including the business of construction, is a significant part of the metropolitan economy. So either you consider them as your partners, or just you consider them as private sector people who just want to make money. Second option is not valid. Building the second option is much more interesting. And when it comes to how to share the benefits of that, well, it will be in the future. But we are now in a situation where the interaction between the public spheres and the private spheres, especially the developers, is much, much stronger than it used to be 10 years ago. And it's been proving quite efficient in sort of relaunching the machine. Just one example, Daniel, if you allow me one last minute. 1 minute. I could speak many more, but I will stick to one. One example. 1 year ago, the new Metropolitan Authority, because we have a Metropolitan Authority, so regional government, Paris government, we have districts, we added up another authority. It's as complex as usual. But this Metropolitan Authority launched a sort of process, the call for proposal. And contrary to initial expectations, there was massive response to this call of proposal, so as to develop 60 sites, 60 locations, 60 neighborhoods in the whole of the, let's say, core of the metro region. And the driving forces of these responses are all real estate companies. All real estate companies who have decided to invest not just in hiring 1 or 2 people to look at plans and do a little bit of lobbying, but who decided to build teams with all the specialties that you can have to build and sell something. They competed, the one with the others, rather fiercely. A couple of hundred of proposals were put on the table, and finally 50 were selected. When the ceremony of awarding who will be able to build where was done just a couple of weeks ago. Over 2,500 people were in the room, and it was really packed. Just to say here that when the real estate industry sort of resets herself, and when there is a sort of framework which has been set up over the last decade exists, then you can relaunch something very, very positive, and you can sort of overcome and bypass the classical and traditional gridlock. Vancouver has done that highly successfully over the last 30 years. Paris is in a learning process. And the last point is that now, as this has been done, the next step is how to investigate and invest in locations, the banlieue, the suburban areas, low-income areas, which still are a little bit out of the target number one of investors, be they French, European, American, Asian, or whomever. And that's not easy. But because there has been this sort of mood and trend of interaction, now they are sort of getting together, even in the sort of lowest income neighborhoods, with a lot of social housing, a little bit of affordable housing, a lot of decaying social housing, finding private sources of funding to rebuild, regenerate, without kicking everybody out, regenerating with what exists already. So I just wanted to share with you, it's not a success story, it's an ongoing story. It also shows, and Daniel likes those lessons of being pragmatic, positive, and with things that work despite all the difficulties. And it can even work at the level of a very big and old complex urban region like the Paris area. And finally, we got our Summer Olympics 2024. So we are proud because London had them and we finally have them. Thanks for attending.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, at this point, we cannot have questions because we have to be out of the room at 7, and we have the last panel, which is on blockchain technology. So I will ask you if you have questions at 7. We can leave the room and you can ask questions right now in the beautiful hallway of the Mandarin Oriental. I would like to ask right now our panelists for the Instruments for a More Transparent World, Mr. Hassan Galal from Pricewaterhouse in the United Arab Emirates, who has prepared a very, very, very interesting visual presentation to speak about the blockchain technology that is a real revolution for the real estate industry.
Good evening, everybody. Pleased to be the last presenter. I think I could have really benefited from the rock music that was playing in that previous video to make sure everybody's awake. My challenge, and that's why I'm not going to be at the podium to walk around, will be in the next 10 minutes or so to try to demystify a little bit what blockchain is all about. Give you sort of like a decision-making type criteria of where would we be able to use blockchain, and then I want to zoom in on some of the existing examples around the world of where it's being used with special attention to its potential in India. Very brief introduction. I'm a computer engineer and scientist by training, and then I got into the cities, sort of like, and smart cities realm over 10 years. And then with all the smart cities technologies that are evolving, I'm finally making use of my engineering degree again. So it's very interesting to see how the two have converged. I'm also a member of the World Economic Forum's Global Future Council on Cities and Urbanization. And a lot of what we do within that group is very relevant to the discussion that we're going to have right now. So let's start with a basic definition, right? And without getting into all the technicalities, you see the definition here. It is a ledger, yeah. It's a way of storing and sharing data between participants. It is shared. Everybody participating has an up-to-date copy of this ledger. And most importantly, any additions need to be agreed on by the majority. How many of you were part of that picture taking that took place before the break? If you You can raise your hands. Yeah, quite a few. So, unfortunately, that was not a blockchain, but very close in some of the characteristics. Yeah. For this to be a true blockchain, when everybody was lining up for the picture, we needed to have basically a shared purpose and transactions. We kind of like got that. At the same time, we needed to have somebody to broker trust. That is, everybody who was joining that line is part of the group. And we would have sort of like constantly updated the information for each new person who's added to the group. Maybe Danielle would have been what we call a miner, not necessarily, you know, in a landmine or something like that. But it's the person who is sort of like delegated by parts of the group that they keep knowledge of every single new transaction, every single new addition to the line. Yeah? Why is it sort of like being so overhyped? We'll get into that later on. But some of the characteristics and the features that you see here, it is secure, it is private, transparent, programmable, tamper-proof, and you cannot really refute it. In terms of some of the applications, so at the heart, blockchain is a technology, yeah? It's an algorithm. It's a series of programmable sort of like transactions where you're able for each transaction to create and keep one version of the truth, right? Now, around this technology, you start to see this layer, which are sort of like the digital assets, smart contracts, identity, and digital currencies. So these are already getting into the applications. How can we use these algorithms, this technology, to do something useful? And of course, computer scientists always have fancy words for these, so they call them use cases. Now, staying away from cryptocurrencies, which, you know, depending on your appetite to gamble, you know, when they ask me personally, I say, it's like going to Vegas. You only invest in cryptocurrencies what you're willing to lose. We will concentrate today on smart contracts because this is a lot more relevant to what you do and the transactions that you do in real estate and land management on a day-to-day basis. So that's kind of like a very high level, sort of like blockchain 101, trying to simplify what it's all about. Why is it sort of like so promising, and what are some of the characteristics, yeah? Like we said, it has a shared ledger, it has these smart contracts, it has a feature of consensus, that once a transaction is made, everybody who's part of the blockchain is actually agreeing that this is a valid transaction. At the same time, you have actually the finality feature. You cannot roll it back. Once a transaction happens, it's part of that history. It's part of that blockchain forever. Think about land contracts and some of the issues around that. So it reduces the cost and complexity. We have a trust. We can reduce fraud. We have an audit trail, security, and the resilience. When you have a single database, and if this database is being held in one place, if that fails, the whole system fails. Blockchain, by its nature, is distributed, which gives it a little bit of resilience. So if one node fails, all the other nodes of that blockchain would have full history of the transactions, which makes it a lot more resilient to failures. So that's another very interesting feature. Now, how do you decide if a domain or a type of application applies itself to blockchain or not? The first point is you need to have multiple parties that are sharing data. Without this requirement, it's almost meaningless to think about blockchain. And then, so if one is a yes, and you have 3 out of these remaining 5 criteria that are, the answer is also a yes, that means that blockchain would actually be a good technology to use. So multiple parties update the data, there is a requirement for verification, there are intermediaries and complexity that you're trying to take out of the system through applying the technology. Yeah? And then interactions are time sensitive and the transactions interact. A lot of what we do in real estate and in land management lends itself to this, and we'll see how. These are some of the examples of what's happening around the world. So you see it's already being adopted in many, many parts of the world in terms of trading, in terms of medical records, in terms of real estate transactions, in terms of company registers, grants in the UK, even elections. You know, I've been approached by a company that has blockchain technology applied for elections as well. So any one of these transactions that involve multiple parties and is time sensitive. Dubai, specifically, going on to the next slide. Yeah. Dubai likes firsts in many ways, yeah? So they claim through the Dubai Land Department that they have done the first blockchain transaction a few weeks ago. So it's already happening, yeah? Sweden has also been looking at this, Georgia. And speaking of first, I mean, Danielle has asked me to talk about the Minister of Happiness in Dubai. Okay, besides the Minister of Happiness, there is a Minister of AI, there's the Minister of the Future, and no, these are not characters out of Harry Potter. These are real positions with real people who occupy these posts. And it shows you how progressive, you know, they have been in sort of like really thinking forward on some of sort of like these cutting edge technologies and what they can do in the future. So these are things that are already happening. But what I will share with you here, and this is not done yet, but if you think about the land registration process in India, these are some of the current issues that you have right now. And our team in PwC India has been actually engaged with several states to try to apply the blockchain strategy and techniques into the land registration. So when you think about some of the characteristics here on the left-hand side, in terms of, you know, the idea of tenuous land titles, overburdened legislation, inefficiencies in the bureaucracy, corruption, and the restricted mobility. All of these characteristics, and through the witnessing process, the intermediaries, and you know, how many people are here are from India?
One.
Just one. Okay.
The president.
So you're from Bangalore, right? You could relate to some of these things, right? And the idea would be to take, you know, the existing process, and in the interest of time, I'm not going to show you the as-is process, but the idea is you redesign the whole land registration process around blockchain so that you're able, basically, at least for all the new transactions, and we will talk about how do you migrate existing database as well so that you can sort of like impose that level of trust and reliability on historic data as well, because that's part of the challenge. But the idea here is that